Welcome back. So nice to have you. We're going to be diving into the sacral center and the root center from a little bit deeper of a layering. Okay, so the sacral and the root, two of the most powerful energy centers, one doing dual duty as pressure as well, pressure and energy. Energy resource as far as the reproductivity or the ability to respond, the respondability, the ability to respond. So these two great powerhouses, you could say. What happens when the two of them connect is that it creates formatting in someone's design. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you have the whole channel. When you just have an activation in one of these channels, gate activations, you just have an activation, a planet hanging around there, it's still going to affect how you show up in the world. So it's a very special place in the body graph that we're learning about today. It's a really important place. In fact, when I look at charts in order to remember and assess them, this particular technique, besides looking at the type, strategy, and authority, the next place that I'll go is I'll look at this particular area of the body graph to see, okay, what is this person's formatting? So that then leads people to say, well, what if I have all three? Well, then you have all three. What if I don't have any? Well, then you don't have any. There is still a format to your body graph. It's just seen within the circuitry. But when you look at activations within this special area, which shows a lot of keys for our need for deep rest, our physical stress and pressure. So if we can get a sense of it as far as this area particularly, then we can see how a person's life is either patterned or cyclical or is oriented to the off-on pulse of here and now or not. And so you just link that to the keynotes of the planets. And I know I said just, you're still learning them, but it really does help you to assess what's going on, not only in a person's chart, but also their interactions with others. Okay. So again, remember that definition is what is colored in as in a full channel. So that's defined. And over here, if we just had a gate activation, that would not be definition. Definition, to be technically correct, I keep reminding you because I was taught wrongly for about, a decade. And it's nice to contagiate people correctly now that I know what I know. Okay, so we're going to begin with the sacral. The sacral energy resource is the only center that creates a type, and it is about energy generation. So the generation of energy, the great fecundity of human beings. If we were to just reach into that body graph and rip out the sacral, we wouldn't reproduce. We wouldn't be alive. Everything hinges upon these people. You're generative, you're one of them. You have a red square colored in, then you have a channel that creates a consistent, reliable, trustworthy energy availability. You are only going to respond to the things that you have energy available to accomplish and finish. So what the sacral center is here for, it's here to create life. It's here to create life and to nourish and protect life. That's what it's here for. That's its job description. Now, there's all kinds of ways that we can create life. Rather than creating babies, which quite literally, yes, it's creating babies, but we could also nurture and protect those babies or children. That being said, anybody who does not have a defined sacral center, like all the non-energy resource people, projectors, manifestors, reflectors, we're not here to leave a lot of genetic material behind, is the way that Ra puts it, as in we can be conditioned to give birth and have babies and raise babies, but boy, is it exhausting to do that kind of work if you're not built for it. And the vast majority of people are running around in not self relationships, and therefore the byproduct of their relationships are not self progeny. So what happens is that there's a lot of challenge to staying together and being able to raise those children. And because of the background frequency breaking down of the 3740, where we don't have the same kind of impetus to stay together for the long haul in love, honor, and obey till death do us part. Oftentimes what happens is the person that you mate with, bond with, and have babies with is not the person that you raise those babies with and what to do. So the breakdown of the family construct, and no longer are we all living in multi-generational households, generally speaking, for the vast majority of at least the modern, developed world, as you might say. So we have a challenge when it comes to we as in our species. If we measure a person's value on their productivity, then you have a lot of people who, quote unquote, come up short in that not only are there people who are non-sacral defined, projectors, manifestors, reflectors, but also you marry that to the fact that you might have somebody who is a quad right or any of the strongly right-facing variable arrows. Then you have people who feel like there's something wrong with them because they're not as productive when they measure themselves against the modern world. And further compound that with the problem, as in the background frequency shift into the 3420 instead of, and that's charisma, design of response becoming, sorry, I always say response becoming deeds, but Ross says it's thoughts becoming deeds. So in response, this capability to be charismatic and busy in the now, that background frequency is conditioning all of us right now. And so you see a lot of people, especially projectors, the busiest peoples on the planet, because they're overdoing it. They're instead of learning how to maximize energy and resources and work with other people and guiding them with their awareness of their energy, the other person's energy, who are you, what the projector attempts to do is try to be them, like them, super slave away, rather than wait for recognition, two-way street, and formal invitation into those big things in life. So they end up enslaved or chained to a job that they hate, to the partner that they hate, to a desk they hate. And then you see also these generators running around thinking that they have to do certain things in order to be like everyone else too. And then you just get a world that is continually frustrated and chronically fatigued. So chronic fatigue syndrome, it's not a thing that's limited only to non-sacrals, but those non-sacrals are the people who generally tend to suffer the most and earlier on and work themselves into an early grave, unfortunately. Now that sounds kind of grim, but it is the experience that I've had and have seen. And we know that the solution is always to not allow the mind to run the show. We're going to do our best to learn from our experiences collectively and individually so that we don't get caught up in the enslavement trip that the sacral generator has been married to, not just in this current day and age, but for 90,000 years. Because if we recall how the hierarchy works as far as the order or orientation of the type, we had our reflectors first, way back in the day. And then came the pure manifesting generator. Out of that came the manifestor and the generator. So manifestors were born to rule, archetypally speaking, not 2145. That is the top of the hierarchy. There is no end to hierarchies. It's how human beings are controlled. So sacral generators, whatever kind you are, your genetic lineage, your ancestral heritage has you for 90,000 plus years being slaves to the manifestor. And unfortunately, that sets up a pattern of I have to, must, should in order to obey or do as I'm told. And you are not that anymore. And what happens is the moment that you give weight to your mind, which is a collection of conditioning from whatever it is that you've learned, what can happen is you continually are slaving away to your mind's process rather than attuning to the authoritative principle in you, which is your sacral energy, knows what it's capable of without your mind getting in the way. The unfortunate thing is that when you were little, whatever kind of authority you have, whether it's pure sacral or emotional, when you were little, your parents, well-meaning though they are, probably wanted you to articulate reasons as to why you had or or use your words. And you learned to attempt to please them because they're bigger than you, they're stronger than you, you want them to love you or whatever. And sometimes that's generally where it tends to happen, where your mind kicks in and starts to go back on your own sacral response because it wasn't necessarily encouraged for you to go with your first initial gut response of or if there was no sound, they pushed you into it rather than giving you, let's say your emotional, your time in order to process things. And I know I've got a child who is a split definition and emotional, and you cannot hurry up this little child. I know how hard it is to give somebody their process, their time. I myself am emotional. I know it takes time. And sometimes our minds can push us into trying to hurry because we're worried or fearful or scared or whatever the case may be. And we don't give our children their time to grow up. Hey, 15 years was the middle age for the seven-centered, right? And 30, oh, okay, hot and bright and it's done. Now, as far as the seven-centered being, now in this era, we've only had like 400 something years to be in this current nine-centered vehicle, which takes 50 years to fully mature, to start to fulfill your life's work. So putting a lot of pressure on the children, I know it's hard, but try not to. And what to do, it is what it is. Sometimes, there are certain things that we cannot help. Like, I know right now a lot of people are having issue with expenses. Everything's very expensive nowadays. So what do? Teach them responsibility, personal responsibility, follow their response. Yeah. Help them be their own authority as soon as it's humanly possible, as long as they are staying safe, because that's our job as parents. Okay, that's my little parenting soapbox rant. Now, there's this false assumption that makes people think if the non-sacral projector, manifestor, or reflector never knows when enough is enough, that a sacral generator automatically knows when enough is enough. And that's a falsity. What I see is that because they are trained very early to ignore their sacral sounds, what tends to happen is they will be more adherent to the mind and its process in an attempt to people please or whatever it happens to be. And then they don't actually follow their sacral. So then the sacral atrophies, just like a muscle, when you don't use it, it atrophies. Same thing happens with the sacral. And there are two ways that the sacral will express. If it's directly connected up to the throat, then the sacral sounds can emit verbal noise making. It can speak and articulate. However, if the sacral is not directly connected to the throat, then its or should be followed without question or reason, without whys. Then you add in the mix of the emotion time as a process, creating more need for contemplation or space or whatever the case may be, playing hard to get, as we recall. When it comes to being emotional, be hard to get. What happens is you question or second guess yourself to the detriment of your satisfaction or with yourself, who you are for yourself. Being who you are for yourself is the most important thing as a sacral generator of any kind, whether it be pure manifesting generator, manifesting through emotional potential, or whatever the case may be, pure emotional. You have to be who you are for yourself first. And that sounds quite selfish, but what to do? This is the school of enlightened selfishness that Ra gave us. And it is about entering into a world that will demand nothing less than you being your own authority. And that means going with your gut. Now, that being said, gut response. There is a very big, over my years of watching people, both teaching and as a student, and as someone who with her ear to the ground, observing people and asking people, interviewing people. When we say gut response, there's a big population of people who say, it's not gut, it's way lower. Okay, way lower, like low, like, the guts, you would think, oh, my intestines. Yeah, generally guts. But some people are more like they're feeling it in their pelvic floor. They're feeling it. This is the sex organs, biologically speaking, what it is associated with, or your ovaries and testes. So it's your reproductive organs, and that's not gut-based. Guts are higher. So there is this, follow your gut bandied about, as in, you'll know what's right. You know what's right. But gut instincts, that's a different thing than maybe gut intuition, which is a different thing than the felt sense that is sensitive. So there's all these different nuances and subtleties, and it has to do with what channels are creating the authoritative process in you or in whoever it is that you're working with. So do be very specific with your words when you're looking at this. Let's start with the circuitry review. You remember that we have this crossover here in the Sacral Center where we have the sensing circuitry, abstract, collective sharing versus logic over here, which is now sharing, but from a sense of the pattern and understanding as it moves into the future. So there's that crossover there in the sacral, and there's this tribal defense circuitry that really is a huge part. I mean, it's a sub-circuit of the tribe, but it's a huge part of our way that we're designed to be able to bond and mate, breed, or care and nourish and protect. So these are genetic role gates that we'll talk about today. So very, very important. Just like I was saying, how here's the individual circuitry, mutation, empowerment. Just like how down here we have formats that are very important to seeing how a person is designed to show up in the world as far as their frequency field. Everything is frequency, everything is vibrating. Are they going to be pattern oriented towards the future? Are they going to be cyclically oriented, looking at the past or responding to what has passed or finishing things? Or are they going to be about the now? Yeah. Or will they be timeless? Tribal is timeless, blood being thicker than water. Now, the last thing, and you see it's kind of off to the side, it is part of integration as well as centering. Centering is another one of those sub-circuits up there that is very important to remember. So the defense circuit and the centering circuit are very important to remember relative to this person's frequency or what they vibrate to, what they align to, what they're here for, what they respond to. And that's very, just like over here, very important when we analyze a chart. Okay? Particularly when you've got a full channel or the entirety of the defense or centering circuit. Very important. Why? Well, because they're so powerful. Remember the root and the sacral center, very powerful centers. They create energy. This one creating pressure as well as energy, or drive, you could call it. The tribe here, this is a large group. I call them wings of the sacral, or like the pelvic floor, it's holding everything up. Okay, so this right here is a large group channel, and so is this. And there's a lot of people, literally people that feed into that. I'm one of them. I'm here designed to be able to advise and guide that. So it's like we all get sucked into this vortex that is created by the sacral beings. They are about create and protect life. If you've ever watched The Fifth Element, one of my favorite movies of all time, create and protect life. That was her trip. Okay. Did I get everything that I wanted to say there? Yeah, circuitry review. So just remembering your circuitry, it's very critical to do. So we have our gates, difficulty at the beginning, ordering. We'll talk more about these when we get to channels. Waiting, fixed patterns, taming power of the small, the gate of focus, possession in great measure, power skills, nourishment, gate of caring, the abysmal, gate of perseverance, the power of the great, the gate of power. And then also we have increase, the gate of growth, and 59, dispersion, the gate of sexuality. So if it's right for you at the end of this presentation, you can go through and attempt to at least write the numbers. If you can't remember the flows of energy, you'll see I've taken the sacral off so that you can see some of the flows, the energetic weaving, if you will, to help you remember. Remember, recalling or speaking these things, explaining these things as soon as possible, testing yourself if you're strategic, if it's fun for you. This is how you're going to be able to remember these things. Repetition being the mother of all learning. You'll hear me repeat myself. Like this, testes and ovaries, the biology of the sacral. So the sacral center itself is related to our reproduction as a species, and to create human life is one aspect of fertility. Here is the place for the buzz of life, the creative energy center, in order to carry on our genetic lineage, to carry on the species. So the place that generates our life force energy. So two places I've noticed where I'll use the term life force. The life force in the channels, okay, life force in the channels, and the sacral center itself, it's our generative energy resource, and that can create life force too. So what happens if you're not defined here? High, like all projectors, reflectors, and manifestors. Then that means there is an inconsistent response. We can't trust that response. There is a potential for amplification and distortion, like with any undefined center. So the ovaries themselves, this is the female hormones produced by the ovaries. They produce estrogen and progesterone, the two things that as you get older, you get less of for females. This is our sex hormones. So estrogen stimulates the growth of the uterus and the vagina during puberty, and secondary sexual female traits, boobs, is that what you're trying to tell us, Internet? Thanks. Breasts. It stimulates egg production and the preparation of the uterus for pregnancy as well, these hormones. Progesterone prepares the uterus wall for possible implantation of an embryo that turns into a fetus and then into a baby. The testes, the male equivalent of the sex hormones being created here, the testes produce testosterone, and it stimulates the formation of our male traits during puberty, what makes them male. It stimulates oil and sweat glands. It also stimulates hair loss and baldness. So with the sacral center, we're talking about the fecundity. The first time I ever heard that word was Raw using fecundity. That sounds weird. Oh, reproductivity or productive creativity. Yeah. Fertility. Remember sacral? Think sex hormones and fertility. So the sacral center directly related to reproduction or productivity, literally, of our human species, as well as there are four different large group channels here. So this is literally the power to impregnate things, not just people, but things, the creative life force, the creativity to make more in the material plane, not just people, but business too. It's the ability to create the energy that we need to live, because without ovaries and testes, we would not reproduce, we'd die out. And without our sacral center, we'd stop generating the life force and we would also die. So challenges with reproductivity, as in, here's my example with my second husband, ex-husband. because of his male reduction of sperm didn't have as much, we had to go and get literally IVF, in vitro fertilization with ICSI. I do not remember what that stands for, but literally they had to take the sperm and inject it into the egg in order for us to have children. So we can be conditioned to be productive, or nowadays we do have modern technologies. And Ra did say that the human species would have a harder and harder time reproducing. If you want your grandchildren to be, or maybe even your children, to be wealthy or well taken care of into the future, he recommended to invest in reproductive or artificial fertilization technologies, because that would be something that would continue to grow. Not only did I do that, but also acupuncture helped quite well. I've always loved that. So let's talk about the genetic roles for bonding and caring. You remember how we had role gates up here that speaks to the nature of your incarnation, cross life work, purpose fulfillment, your profile, your public role? The way that we get those keynotes to describe somebody's role in life is we look at these role gates. And here's two more. Our genetic roles as far as how are we here to attract a mate, sexuality, 59, and how are we here to nourish or take care of what we've created through mating. So if you think about it like this, taking in, yeah, and then giving out energy these are the ways that we're designed to do that. So even if you don't have any planets in these gates, you still have those gates, and all you have to do is look at your personality line quality, and you can go read those lines and see that that's your way to bond mentally. However, if you look at your body side, whatever line quality your profile is there, now you can read that line and see this is the way that your body is designed to be sexually attractive or attracting a mate, okay? In order to create, in order to bond and make more, or to care for what we have created, whether that be a baby or family or a business too. Now, the sacral, again, shares this quality with the G center in that both of these centers have role gates, public role or profile gates, meaning we go and read those very special gates in order to understand how this person is here to be themselves. Excuse me. Hiding a little something here. In the G, there are the role gates of the self, role of the self in interaction or in listening or in creative self-expression or in behavior. So these are about how we move through the world in our body as unique vehicles. Remember, pulling me to me and you to you. Separate, the illusion of separation from each other. Those three Sphinx gates bring out roles of direction, and one vessel of love gate sets our behavioral roles in the world. Now, what happens with our genetic role gates is that we have sexuality and caring, nourishing, protecting the young. In the Sacral Center, remember, this is the defense system. What is the best defense? Have a good offense, outnumber the other tribes, so make more people and nurture and care for them and educate them so that we can outnumber and outvalue, stick together like glue in order to have strong tribal communities. So these are the gates that create the basic genetic roles for the foundation of our community structures. This mutation that's happening is actually affecting our sexuality currently, the 2027 background frequency. 59 generates who we bond and mate with, and 27 generates how we will take care of the results of our bonding. So the energy resource of the Sacral Center can respond in order to have sex, can respond in order to care. If there is no response, the sex ain't there or the care ain't there. no, not now. This is the thing that it is here for. Now it can be conditioned to that. It can be guilt tripped into that. But is it really truly going to be satisfying? Mm-mm. That's why it's so important to know thyself and to feel into your responsibility, your ability to respond. Sex here and now? Okay, game on. If not, then wait for the energy to build in order to procreate and have a better, funner time of it. Okay, the sacral center, it influences the quality of our sexual relationships and the nature of why this one versus that one, how we bond with others. Really fascinating study. Ra has a sexuality course that I'm so excited someday I get to teach for Jovian, because it is just a real interesting trip. This is just one part of the picture when it comes to sex or caring. There is so much more in those streams to be aware of, but this is where the root of it all comes from as far as your response or how you're here to bond and mate with others. So we all have our own way, again, linked to your personality or your body, the line quality. You can just go and read them and know what you're here for, how you're here to bond and mate with what. As a 3, what is very different. Okay, usually with what is different because we are programmed to procreate with people who are very different from us. Why oftentimes when you put 2 charts together of lovers, you're looking at very different charts. They look like puzzle pieces, almost exactly polar opposite, because the genes want us to bond with what is different in order to make stronger and expand the genetic species, stronger offspring. Okay, so this is, again, sacral center is the only type center. The only center in the body graph, in other words, that is tied to creating a type of human being. The word generator and the word sacral truly are one and the same. It's just the sacral identifies a center and the generator is what is created when the sacral center is defined. Most of us, 67% of the population, are here to generate life, to find power through response, the energy availability, the available energy, or satisfaction of who you are for yourself, satisfaction of doing what you love, satisfaction of your passion, your ability to use up your energy. That's the theme for a sacral being, a generator being who is in alignment and in attunement. Okay. So when we're talking about the sacral, it is also the only center that has sound making as non-verbal sound making, mind you, sound making as part of its authoritative process. So think of it like if we were to create a channel, okay, whatever channel it happens to be, doesn't matter. Think of them like hollow tubes, okay? There's a hollow tube and it's connected up to another center through that tube. So the tube is opened, the gate, the portal is opened by a planetary activation sitting there. Okay, the moment that the available energy comes in, that sound rings through the tube. Okay, so the sacral sound is your nature. If you think back, well, you probably can't think back that far. Some people can. My husband is quite weird like that way. He remembers when he was a baby. I won't mention that actually. He remembers certain things as a baby. If you were able to go back to yourself as a child and remember making sounds before you were verbal, pre-verbal sounds, the cooing, the oohing, the eyeing, the grunting, the groaning, the moaning, that's all your sacral sounds, more availability to make noise from this resonant frequency, this vibrational tube that is there for you to be aware of. But the less that you pay attention to your nonverbal sounds that you're making, or the more unconscious definition you have in the sacral, the less your mind identifies with it. And if any of you know Peter Schober, I think I'm saying his name correctly. I interviewed him a really long time ago for Jovian, and he said it took him a good 3.5, 4 years to hear his own sacral response. in the experiment, to like hear it and get it and go, oh, that's me. Most of the time, the sacral is so atrophied that you have no idea that you're making sounds. So think of it like when you're making yummy food sounds or yummy sex sounds, whatever the case may be. You know, you're not speaking here, you're making noise. So the sacral has a voice, but it's guttural, it's nonverbal. And if you do not have your sacral sounds, well, then it's probably atrophied. Again, reminder that once it's directly connected up to the throat, now we have words, we have language. This particular channel cuts off the sacral sound and makes it verbal. It makes it potentially verbal. So do your best to remember that your sounds are the most important thing. Now, if you're emotional, you've got to wait for clarity on the sounds that you make. Waiting for clarity means you feel into the felt sense of the body and the alignment of the resonance principle of whether or not this is appropriate for you to get into. Because remember, your sacral knows. Your sacral is always responding or not, moment by moment by moment. And the emotional system creates a collection of moments for you to be aware of potentially or possibly express the awareness of. In generation of the energy, you will feel the kundalini or the expansiveness rise from within. And now all of a sudden you're doing something. We're having sex here, you know, or we're building a business because that's what this is about. Okay, now we're having sex. Okay, sex is done. Let's eat. You know, I mean, this is the thing that we are here for, is to eat and have sex and procreate and make more. And that is, generally speaking, what human beings are here for, as far as our evolutionarily speaking, way of being. In order to keep up with the rapid earth changes, we had to pass on the genetic lineage in order that our children could keep up with and evolve too. And, you know, we have the thing called reincarnation that takes care of our continued evolution, whether or not you believe in that. Okay, the sacral voice. I think she's funny. Similar to the throat in that it has its own voice, but again, non-articulate unless it's connected up to the throat. That sacral voice, all the inarticulate sounds, whatever it sounds like to you overseas, it might sound different. These are very primal sounds, and they are not about explanation. So the moment you go up into why, like a parent saying, don't you tell me, tell me why, you know, whatever. They're conditioning you away from your sacral sounds. And from as early as you can learn how to talk, they're trying to get you to articulate whether or not that's right for you or not. So that's one of the challenges to being a generator. Go with the flow, they said. Oops. Yeah, there is a flow to the energy here. A generator will respond with the sacral, and people may ask, but why? Explain yourself. That doesn't make sense. And it's not necessarily about making sense. If you as a generator fall into the trap of trying to explain yourself, you will do it from the mind, because explanations come from 4323. They don't come from the sacral. The sacral is or Okay, so who knows what will come out from mind? It's whatever rationalization or distortion that will either allow you to get what you want or get that person off your back so that you can get what you want, you know? It won't be the sacral truth. Just like the body knows at times, like the splenic center knows before something might happen. It just knows what it knows. It's not about trying to explain why it knows what it knows, or any of those things that are rationalizations, trying to take away any fear. It just is or it isn't. There's a response, yes, to sex or food or bonding or focusing and concentrating or whatever it happens to be, yes or no. However, sometimes there is no response, either with the sacral voice or otherwise. This is because there's no energy, meaning the sacral is not ready. It means simply a time to wait. That availability to respond to what life is bringing to you is not there to do anything with whatever life is bringing to you. So you just wait. You let it go. You know, live to fight another day or whatever it is that you're dealing with. And in that sacral vortex, now, I forgot to, I was going off on a little inspired rant, and I'm going to go back here real quick. We are on page, what is this? 20. So I want to show you this real quick because it's a better image. But you see that little sacral vortex there? Same thing going on here. It's slightly off kilter. It's not an exact triangle. There is a vortex here, like literally the central hub of the vortex, 14, gate 14. I'm raising my hand because that's my person or design sun. So what this 14 is literally doing is being a vortex. It's pulling things in. The very core of the heart of the sacral is the gate 14, power, skills, okay? The capacity in order to generate a new direction moving forward. So you see, we have that 14 up here in the quarter of the wheel that is about mutation and transformation, where all of these right next to each other are together. And then we just have a couple off here to the side about bonding and a few more over here about the fulfillment of the mind's process. But the bulk of the work is here. Lead hexagram always tells so much about a group of hexagrams. It is about mutation, this deep potential transformation that the sacral center brings. Why? It creates life. It generates, it nurtures, it protects. See, create and protect life. That's what it's here for. And this vortex, this spiraling vortex, and there's even one right here. Remember I was saying earlier, the 34 is kind of offset. This spiraling vortex that is generated when people come together, particularly in large groups, is that it's an energetic feed, if you will, from other people into the sacral. Sacral energy is like a magnet. It pulls things in. It literally pulls people in, pulls life in for it to respond to. So the pulsing, okay, pulsing, magnetic, powerful field, either in patterns or in cycles, generating life, pulsing outward and drawing things into it. The sacral energy resource creates the largest auric frequency field from these two channels particularly. I will remind you when we get there and talk about channels. Large energy frequency field. So this vortex of energy is there in order to build life. That's why I have some builders here on this picture. The gates in the mandala, where we see the sacral gates, form a loose triangle, like a vortex, a spiraling, sucking inward of energy, like how a black hole is. So if we could see the nature of the sacral center, we would see this vortex, this spiraling field of energy. It literally generates a spiral, and the sacral has a merging of energies within the circuits. You'll see it when you get to the test yourself area, where I've shown the linkages underneath the sacral center, for to just take off the red square and see underneath, see the wiring underneath. Oh, here's an example right there, the sacral vortex. So we notice the connection between 9 and 5 and 42 and 29 and the 3 to the 14 and the 59 and the 27. And then here comes the 34, which is separate. It's part of integration, doesn't connect up in the same way. So this is important to understand, particularly at the higher levels of human design education, not just to understand the patterning and the circuitry and the flow of energy, but also when it comes to the larger group dynamics, transpersonal auric frequency fields of penta, 3 to 5 people, or wa, 10 to 16 or more people coming together in groups. This merging of the spiraling vortex literally vibrates from the moment a generator is born until their very last breath. When the 29, instead of saying yes to everything, says no to life. That's literally where it's time for the body starting to let go and turning on the death process. It says yes to death. It says no to life, right there at 29. So the sacral vortex, the spiraling, like the whirling dervishes, all of us who are non-sacrally defined from birth, our definition only comes from birth, we are surrounded by and conditioned by most of the population to be generative, to think that we have to be generative, to compare and to measure ourselves against their productivity. It is a very deep pull, and if we do not live our strategy, we will get into situations where the energy just burns us up. So feeling fried, one of the most common things it feels like to me. I feel fried. I feel burnt out. I feel burnt up. I feel exhausted, as far as I can't keep up. And back in the day, the mind would say, but you have to. You can't afford to take a nap or sleep or, rest. There's too many things to do because your mind is running the show. And this is the trap. Now, same thing can happen with an unconsciously defined generator. Again, remember, the mind has no freaking clue about your unconscious channels. No clue. And the primary conditioning from your body to your mind is you overdo. So this is why oftentimes generators say, but I don't have energy. I'm not like the Energizer Bunny. This system is bunk or whatever. It's because you're probably pitting your metal against things that are not for you to do. So you're constantly, it's like dragging yourself through mud, pushing yourself to do things that you're not responding to. And of course, you're going to exhaust yourself and burn yourself out. If you think you have to super slave away at a job that you hate, you're so frustrated that you think that that's life. And there's this undercurrent of frustration that's slowly killing you. You're exhausting you, burning yourself out because you're not regenerating at night if you're not doing the things that light you up, that fill you up, that fill your cup. Because you're here to do what you're passionate about, the things that you do being something that satisfy you, like deep satisfaction, to where, yes, you could fall into bed exhausted, particularly the pure sacral generators are here to use up their energy completely. That's what leads them to regenerate overnight, is by using up their energy completely. Again, that's the pure sacral generator. So this sacral vortex, I put this picture here because one of my students a mother who was projector and her entire family was generator. She said that she was wearing her heart rate monitor, and the moment that one of them would come and sit next to her, her heart rate would go up. My husband and I recently got a sleep machine, and it has a nap setting. It's only good for one person, so I've given it to him to test, and because he's the one with sleep issues, and he just quit weed so that he doesn't have to rely on that in order to sleep. So he gave me this experience of it yesterday, and my little generator cat, of the 5 animals, only one is generative. She came and she laid on my chest. And I had this little watch thing that I just took off. It's a wearable that tracks your heart rate while you're on the thing. And he said, what happened to you in the middle of the nap session? I said, oh, the cat came on my chest. And she, of course, raised my heart rate. So now I know that that is no joke. It really actually does happen from personal experience. Before, it was just a student who told me that she could notice the generator sitting next to her raised her heart rate, and she was doing nothing different. Just a child or whoever came, sat next to her, and it raised her heart rate. So what can happen when you have an undefined sacral is riding the wave of a defined sacral can make open sacrals go really fast. But eventually we will burn ourselves out, as is often seen in the throat center. So remember, the throat center is the mechanism of our gearbox that has to do with how your energy is being expressed. So what this shows up like then, this combination is illnesses like chronic fatigue syndrome, any reproductive organ issues, what is it? Ovarian cysts used to be something that I really had a lot of problems with before the deconditioning process. Overwork, too much work, too much sex. Undefined sacrals can get addicted to sex in the not self. Okay, so the sacral center, its reproductive capability, its sexuality, again, ovaries and testes, that's the biological correlation. What kind of center is it? Do you recall what's its function? And those who are defined are here to what? They generate life. The undefined sacral center, the wisdom potential is study life, to, as a projector, guide the energy, as a manifestor, initiate the energy, as a reflector, reflect on or evaluate the energy. And the not self strategy of the undefined sacral. Now, this is one of the really interesting places where there is a discrepancy as far as the pattern that I see that Ra put out. What you'll find is that he always says not knowing when enough is enough. And it's interesting in that he did not have any activations in his sacral. So of course he would have said not knowing when enough is enough. Okay. But generally speaking, we start the sentence of not knowing with any of the open centers that are totally undefined, as in wide open. Wide open. Not knowing is the function of a totally open center. So when do you know when enough is enough? As far as anybody, defined or undefined, it is an authoritative process that you attune to. And you can start to learn your body's tells. It's very important, especially for the non-sacral beings, to know what your body tells are when you get fatigued or you've overdone it. Because remember, you get overzealous and you don't know when enough is enough. You don't know when to quit. Those activations that are within one's sacral in the openness, open center, undefined sacral, those are the things that bring the protective mechanism to the being who is undefined to know when is it enough, when to quit, when to stop, to remind oneself, whatever your tells happen to be. Okay. Sorry, memory. Okay. The root is the next step that we're going to go into. I can see that we've had an hour though. So I'm going to give you a brief break. Get yourself rehydrated if you need. I'm going to go get some ice water because it's super hot here in Arizona today. And I will see you in a few. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit longer, maybe even. So there's going to be some review, and then as well as adding on the layering of more and more information. Looking at the root, we can see 3 down here in the quarter of civilization, purpose fulfilled through form. And then all of the rest are up here in mutation, purpose fulfilled through bonding, which is interesting, particularly at the end of the quarter, because this is the fulfillment or the application area of mutation and transformation. So all of these really deep pressures, truly transformative, mutative pressures. And if we think about it in the larger scale, rather than just the human individual scale, we can think of how, you know, how Pluto has been hanging out in gate 60, tons of people saying, I feel frustrated, I feel stuck, I feel limited. Why am I still in limitation? Why can't I move beyond this? You know, the contraction of our money, as far as not being able to have as much on the material plane business. You know, there's just all these limitations happening. So if we think about that from Pluto's standpoint, Pluto, the death and rebirth planet, the thing that is mutating, anytime it goes through a gate, it mutates that gate. A thing that's mutating us as a species, that in the evolutionary processes, we spiral around through space and time in the wheel. Remember, the wheel is a calendar. This Pluto taking us through not only a death and rebirth of our species, but that is just the evolutionary process, that all in the spiral of life, all ends are beginnings, and that death is just a doorway, a process to reincarnation, a new beginning, you know, a new incarnate, to come into the flesh, a new process in order to progress and evolve as a species. So the root center, remember, when you're not self, it's important to contemplate these shadow state questions. Are you in a hurry to get rid of the pressure? Because if you're running around on autopilot, what can happen is you're just locking yourself in jail, if you will, as in you're subjecting yourself to stresses and pressures that aren't necessarily yours, and it's an uncomfortable place to be. The root, the drive and stamina of a human being, is here to have certain vitality or fights, abilities, certain decreases, and certain obstacles that it needs to bypass, certain needs, certain things that it has to start, and limitations that it has to get over, and new beginnings. These processes that are here are helping us to evolve. That's what the root center is all about. So when you go to test yourself, you're going to see that this is the way that it looks underneath, as far as what gates are there and how they function. Currently, the 19 is here, gate of waiting, or sorry, waiting, wanting, need, okay, approach, gate of approach, wanting. And then we have the 38 over here, opposition, the gate of the fighter. Across the way, we have the 39, obstruction, the gate of provocation. 41 is decrease. This is our start codon in our genetics. This is the gate of contraction. 52 is keeping still, mountain over mountain. This is the gate of stillness. 53 is development, the gate of beginnings. 54, the marrying maiden, the gate of ambition or drive is another word you can use. The 58 is the joyous, the gate of vitality. And 60, where Pluto is currently, limitation, the gate of acceptance. In order to transcend any limitation, one must first accept that there is a limitation, rather than burying one's head in the sand or pretending it's not there. Accept what is. That is what it is to be aware. And so that's the first step. Now, as we move through the evolutionary journey, what's going to happen is that 19 is going to retract. The 49 is letting go of it. It's going to retract into the center itself. So when we have our evolutionary process as a species in 2027 and beyond, 19 will no longer be creating a channel with the 49. It's actually going to connect up with the 53 in order to connect to the 41. So we'll have a change in the software down the road so that people see the dynamics of what's to come. All right, so the biological correspondence or correlation of the root are the adrenal glands. Adrenal glands are right on top of the kidneys. So you can see that they're sitting there and they're there to inject energy into the system in order for us to deal with life stressors or pressures. And what happens, unfortunately, in today's day and age is most people are running around as if everything is life-threatening rather than taking their time with things. And I say most people because we are conditioned to go fast. Especially, you look at an undefined sacral plus an undefined root like Ra was. And then you add the fact that he's a manifestor. Oh my God, some of the fastest people in the world. Manifestors with an undefined root. Fast. I mean, just fast. Okay, non-emotional, especially, of course. So let's say not just all the people who are undefined in sacral or root or both, even faster. You're looking at somebody who has an unconsciously defined root system. Then you have a challenge in that their mind thinks they have to be fast, while their body is designed to take its time. So this is one of the fun places that you can actually start to witness or watch as your body evolves. When your mind lets go of running the show, your body will be more relaxed, even though your mind is still stressed out. I should be hurrying. I should hurry up. I should hurry up. And that's what drives you crazy, is you believing your mind inside of your head. I should hurry up. I got to do faster. I can't afford to wait, and whatever the case may be. But the body is doing its thing. And that's part of the interesting dynamic of what happens with these adrenal glands. They are meant to be able to help us get through some really tough times, like emergencies, like moving really fast or doing heroic things. These adrenal glands, or you could also call them suprarenal. Arenal speaks to the kidneys, the way that we talk about kidneys, arenal, okay? but it's suprarenal. So it's on top of the upper portion of each kidney. They secrete hormones. They're steroid hormones, which maintain electrolyte balance. They regulate our response to stress. Think pressure, think root, think physical stress, our metabolism and the immune system, the sex hormones, and adrenaline. So it's not just adrenaline that the adrenal glands produce, but it also helps us by creating these steroidal hormones that help us regulate and have our fight or flight response to stress. So Cannon proposed that the stress response, fast, was a fight or flight response marked by the outpouring of epinephrine and norepinephrine from the inner adrenal glands, increasing heart and respiration rates, mobilizing sugar and fat, and they also dull pain to help us get through those stressful situations. The stimulation of the cortex by the sympathetic nervous system causes the release of the hormones into the blood, and this initiates that fight or flight response. This process is very useful in short bursts to remove you from immediate danger, like back in the day when it was either kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. But the increased levels of stress over long periods of time, like driving as an example, you're barreling down the freeway in this giant, killing machine that if you went too far on one side or the other of the lane, you would run into passing traffic or off a cliff or something like that. It can be quite stressful. That's just one example of the modern day stressors that we take for granted that should be normal, but to this body, this vehicle that has not had, eons to develop with that kind of stress, having it a long, sustained, continual process of exposing oneself to stress without, de-stressing can be extraordinarily harmful, because that's extra work that this body, this heightened state, puts on the body. Extra work meaning extra stress, extra requirements to be able to manage stress and pressure. And that wisdom potential is what the undefined root center is here for. How do you handle stress and pressure? Okay, instead of hurry, hurry, hurry for no good reason, it's like a toilet. You flush the toilet, the stress fills back up again. You get rid of the thing really quickly, well, it just fills back up again. You get a stack of paper on your desk that is, there are things that have to get done quickly. Well, you get them done quickly, and other people come and they just pack more stuff on your to-do inbox because you're going to get it done fast. They say, and they see. Oops, what did I do here? Put that back. Okay. So physical pressure, mental or physical pressure. Remember, pressure sandwich, mental, head, physical, root, down below. The duality of this pressure, head and root, keeps us moving, keeps everything moving towards expression or manifestation at the throat. So because there is an anxiety process here, or a fear, or a nervousness process here, this pressure sandwich, which those who are undefined particularly are sensitized to, what happens is the stress from below and anxiety from above creates pressure that isn't healthy for it to be there all the time. It's not designed to be there constantly. If it is, then we do burn out. Okay? If it is there constantly, we do burn out. How do we get out of the pressure? Nap, sleep, exercise, movement, creativity, emote, put pen to paper, write those things down rather than staying up late with it spiraling in your head. So do something about the stress and pressure, please. It's killing you, because the stress is one of the root causes of all of this dis-ease or ill health that a lot of people are thinking that, oh, well, it's just a growing old thing. It doesn't have to be. The stress is designed to be temporary. The pressure is designed to be temporary. It's not designed to be constant. And if you're hypersensitive, your nervous system is all jacked because you're overwhelmed. Chronic overwhelmment is one of the things that I have seen with the undefined sacral, particularly. because the undefined sacral is not here to be constantly active or generative, to be more correct and specific. Now, stress is not good or bad. It's simply how we are here to be able to evolve. Stress is designed to pressure us. It's designed to move us. We need some healthy stress in there in order to grow and develop. But how we interact with it is most important. These pressures, I want you to look at the root and think of them like these gate activations, like pressure valves. Anytime you have a gate, think portal in space, think opening. So the pressure has to go somewhere. The 41's pressure goes to desire, feel, new experiences. The 39's pressure goes to passion, to provoke the spirit in others. The 19's pressure goes to need. Its needs to be met, the affection and loyalty, the bond of being in a bargain where there is love, honor, and obey in the tribal context. The 52, the 52's process is the pressure to focus. The 60 is the pressure to mutate. The 53 is the pressure to begin. And this physical pressure of the 54 is ambition, to rise up, like literally up the corporate ladder. The 38's pressure is to find purpose. And the 58's pressure is to correct. It's pressure to correct or even to perfect. So when you think about these physical pressures, think again like a hose or a valve. It needs to go somewhere. So where is it going? Even if it can't reach that because you don't have an activation there. Remember, all of these are portals in space that you have either an activation, a planet that's locking it into a specificity, a uniqueness, or it's open and you amplify either through transits or people. So you have all of this. That pressure is going to go in 3 different directions, okay? The physical pressure to the sacral, or the physical pressure to the emotional, or the physical pressure to the splenic are very different ways of processing stress and pressure, different outlets or off-gassing, if you will. Your genetic potential is going to show you what is consistent, reliable, trustworthy, if it's defined, or a potential for off-gassing or learning about how to off-gas pressure and stress. If we don't interfere with the pressure, it isn't going to disturb us. Stress is not bad. This drives us with essential fuels. These are fuels for our whole living process. The things that we don't like, the fear, the stress, the pain, part of it is part of what makes us human. We are in these physical bodies again. So it's what brings us to an awareness of our consciousness, our body, our reproductivity, depending on where these things are, because 6 of these, of the 9, are to awareness. Awareness. It is all about being aware here. So oftentimes people are quite addicted to things that help them make it through the day. Caffeine is one of those things that you can abuse potentially in order to keep up. So it is challenging to control oneself, I know, with certain things that, you know, and then if you overdo it, oh, the jitters. This is where the juice is, you could say, for our health, our sex, and our emotions, because it's the drive to experience these things, our creativity as well, the drive. Remember, it's the drive, the pressure, the push. The root center is like caffeine. It can get you going in the morning, but it can also be addictive and destabilizing if you abuse it. So if you use artificial stress in order to get things done. Example, you got an undefined root center. What can happen is, because you don't know, when to hurry, because if it's totally open, you don't know when to hurry. And deadlines are not healthy for you to have. And yet you're part of the world that, prioritizes deadlines and multitasking and getting things fast. What you might do in order to compensate for that is you put yourself under artificial pressure and stress in order to get things done quicker, maybe. And maybe you're not designed to be so quick. Maybe you're basic split and you need more time to process, to connect or collaborate. Maybe you're emotional and needs more time to process. So oftentimes our minds come up with strategies in order to affect change to what we think we should be or do rather than accepting what is. And that's a problem. If you don't accept what is, then you don't have the opportunity to overcome any limitations because let's say you're manifesting generated. So you're automatically skipping steps and you're trying to hurry, undefined root, even worse, trying to hurry to get all kinds of stuff done. And you're not allowing life to take the time that it takes to enjoy life. So you're speeding up life and to the detriment of your adrenal system. And it creates a problem with cortisol, meaning you're not going to be able to sleep very well. You're going to gain weight. You're just going to be stressed. And what to do? Follow your decision-making process so that you know what is true rather than getting all stressed out. Our root center is a major motor, one of 4 motors. Remember, it is a duality. It's energy and it's pressure. And it has one and only one purpose. It pumps out fuel. And this gets pumped up again to 3 places. The immune system, the splenic center, glucocorticoids. That's how it expresses over there. Water regulation, the solar plexus, mineral corticoids. And then to the sacral center that we covered earlier, the sex hormones. Again, the kundalini energy rising up through the reproductivity. As far as us as human beings, designed to produce more, make more. And that leads us to the format frequencies. Formats are very, very special. I want you to get into the habit of looking at formats as soon as you've assessed a chart, as in you've seen what kind of type, what's the authority, maybe you look at the profile, maybe you look at the life's work. But the next place I want your eye to be drawn, it's not in the, software. It's something that to a trained analyst's eye, this should be the next place that you look to, is the formats. These are the formats, format frequencies. They create the frequencies, they generate the life frequency, the life force frequency of a human's design. So anytime there is a format channel in a person's chart, that energy is going to govern the frequency that this person has. Even one gate, Laveena's got a couple of them up here, in the format structure will affect the energy of the whole being, the entirety of that person's design. It's either going to pull them into a pattern, or it's going to draw them into a cycle, or it's going to format them with a pulse, okay? That's the way that these formats work, whether it is a whole channel or whether it's just a gate. So we have our collective cyclical maturation process, the gate 53 being beginnings, meeting up with the endings of the cycle of experience in order for us to have cyclical, balanced cyclical development. That is maturation, okay? Takes time, cyclical. Takes time, why? Because it's cyclical, it's a process. All abstract circuitry is cyclical. Why? Because of this channel, that's why. It formats the entirety of the circuitry. 2, always wanting to finish what she starts. She's got the 42, ending things. Now, starting things, another story. Hard to start things. Need somebody else's help. Can you start this project for me and I'll take it over from here? That's part of the process of how we're here to connect with each other when you have gate activations on either side meeting in a channel. Okay. The individuality of the pulsing mutative frequency, that is this ability to have pulses, an energy that pulses, initiates and fluctuates and operates in a pulse. That's mutation. Now, that's a very strong word when we think about the word initiates. So we usually leave that to the manifestors. Remember, always preface this with in response. When we have generative channels, in response can mutate. That's the 60 limitations and ordering the 3. The collective focused concentration of the 52, the 52-9, giving us determination in response to have pattern orientation. Again, remember the frequency field: patterns, future, cycles, past, mutation, the pulsing of the present moment, here and now, off and on, whether it's just an activation, one planet, or the whole channel. It still affects the being. So you've got the gate of acceptance, 60. That's going to affect the entirety of your design. Meaning, let's say your emotional wave is over here. That means then your emotional wave is going to have the pulse of acceptance within it, because this is the way that you are formatted, just like everything else is going to have the pulse of acceptance within it, or not. There's always the or not. In action, the gate 52 is waiting for the right time to focus, just like the beginning is there for finding the cycle in order to end things. And then we have the acceptance, the process of overcoming limitation, bringing about order. Quite difficult at the beginning to order things, but what to do? For some of us, it's true that you have to wait for the response, because it's your responsibility to operate in response. Okay, so a few more things about the root. I have a little article. It's going to be hard for you to see, but I'm going to zoom in and read it for you, from Martin Grassinger. Okay, Martin Grassinger, just a little bit, not the whole thing, because it goes into transits towards the end. But I think Martin was one of those guys that, professionals that Ra entrusted to work on certain aspects of design, because he had training as a naturopath, I think he was, something like that, or he still is around. You can see he's very young in this picture. Okay, so it says here, 1, drive and vitality. In the human design system, the 3 energy formats have fundamental significance for understanding health and illness. They show the currents, which currents are operating in someone's design, either alone or in combination. So that 5342, that cyclical energy, that wave pattern, it's expansive, and also it's wet. So you have activations there. What tends to happen is you get the wet cough. That's cyclical. It comes and goes in waves. The 52-9, the focused energy in the static pattern, is concentrated. So this is the concentrated illness that's going to be in a pattern. It's going to be in a pattern as far as how it's going to show up, and it's going to be the dry cough kind that bothers you. And it may, that pattern, take a long time to go away. The 63, the pulse energy, that's the off-on pattern. That's the mutative one. That's very deep and profound, limited as a process of off and on as far as the illness is concerned. You seem fine, and then you're not fine. Okay, this off and on frequency. So those 2 centers are connected by these 3 channels, both motors, though entirely different in their functions. Sacral is the center of vitality, the fire, the ardor, he's saying here. Root is the fuel towards the splenic and the solar plexus as kinetic energy, or their drive, towards the sacral, the 3 energy formats of, he's calling it vitality. Even though technically the 58 is the gate of vitality, the vitality, or the vibrancy, we could say, of the being as a generative principle. Not all of us are consistently generative, but all of us generate energy, otherwise we would die. It's just inconsistent. So these energy formats, these 3 channels connecting the root to the sacral center, represent the foundation of the 3 major circuits. Remember, our 3 major circuits. These 3 channels at the bottom, the pressure from below, correspond to the 3 channels at the top of the body graph, the pressure from above. So as above, so below. Okay, this is from the Rave Body Graph Atlas. Head, again, inspiration, pressure from above, pressurizing awareness. Root activation, pressure from below, pressurizing the life force. Now, interestingly, this dynamic within the middle, where we have the central power column, literally to right here, this stuff moves down, no power there. This stuff moves up in an individual, but the moment that we come into contact with groups, with 3 to 5 people or 10 to 16, now we have different energy flows. But just for now, in an individual, I want you to see energy moving up through the Kundalini. Yeah, don't forget the crossover that's there. Through the identity in order that manifestation happens. So here he says drive and vitality are often confused. People who have strong drive but less vitality in their designs, and so here he's talking about the sacral vitality, are in danger of overestimating their life power. Okay, their vitality is also overestimated by others, including therapists, including doctors. When those with strong drive overextend their vitality, it can lead to exhaustion that sooner or later manifests as illness that even strong drive cannot avoid. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because now he starts to talk about transits. This sacral center, again, powerful motor in response. That doesn't mean that non-sacral beings don't have power. It's just that their vitality, their energy is inconsistent. Laveena did the Ironman triathlon at 19 years old. And the second time I tried to do it, I didn't finish at mile 14 of the run, which is the last part, is a marathon. It's an all-day event, takes a long time. Just because someone does not have the energy of the sacral motor defined does not mean they don't have energy. I'm an energy projector. I've got 2 motors in my design. But the vitality or the vibrancy to generate life consistently is not there. So the moment you see that somebody's chart has motors and it's open in the sacral, now you have more vulnerability to try to use these motors in place of, we can even put the heart there because that can still happen, trying to use these motors in place of the strong, vibrant hum of the sacral energy resource. And so what happens? Overwhelm is the word I hear most commonly, okay? Emotional overwhelm could be over here, open there. Physical overwhelm over there, open there. The body sensation of fear overwhelm over here. So overwhelm is one of those things that I hear as far as, or my experience also too, in undefined centers. So here I'll continue just a little bit and see what he has to say there. Confronted with Pluto's transit in gate 14, when this was happening, this particular article was written, possession in great measure. Many people overestimate their vitality and their bodies will force them to slow down. Jupiter was in gate 5 that year, mid-February through mid-May, waiting, impaired the vitality of many by the way of a disturbed rhythm of the blood. Jupiter's retrograde movement into gate 9, taming power of the small, might point out even more clearly that drive can't always push the body, and it is wise to take only small steps. Now, step-by-step process. When you look at a sacral, not connected to the throat, you're looking at somebody who needs a step-by-step process. Okay, step-by-step process, pure sacral generator or emotional step-by-step process. For strong and healthy life energy, the sacral center as a motor of vitality, specific laws frequently ignored have to be followed. Those laws are enough sleep, activity, relaxation, balanced nutrition. They all contribute to the health of the bioform. The rhythm of balancing is always individual, but is ruled by the rhythm of a day, morning to morning, the on and off switch of the vegetative nervous system. Vegetative, that's interesting, nervous system. Okay, so if you want to learn more from Dr. Martin Grassinger, he is not listed at the IHDS because he left that institution. Okay, but he is definitely someone who knows his stuff. If you're dealing with health issues and you want to learn more, I have incorporated some of his work into my Emerge program as far as the ways in which we are here to digest or fuel the process of what we're here to eat and digest. And that I will go over we will talk about it a bit when we get to channels. So I'm not going to do that today, but I do that in detail when I work with people, with my clients specifically, especially in the deeper layers of the work. I don't want to do it too soon because I don't want people to just take my word for it before they've experimented with being their own authority. Okay, so there's this recognition that I have about depression. And this is where one of the places where we find it, the formats, okay, for depression or equaling a need for deep rest. So like when we have a depression in the earth and water, it comes to pool, it comes to rest. When the body is in depression, there's usually a physical manifestation of overwhelm where the body needs deep rest. It literally needs to rest. There's something that the body's dealing with. It needs to rest when we have depression. Now, there are many different reasons why one could also be depressed, and the mind's distortion can amplify and exacerbate these experiences of getting limited or locked into and stuck within the depression. We're going to talk about every gate out of the root center because they can be a place for depression, just like one of the many major side effects of stress is depression. However, it's especially true when we talk about the format energies. Both pressure, physical or mental, operate similarly in that they are connected to that power column that passes through the body. And therefore, there is a connection to the mental process. And this is partly why depression can happen so easily, because your mind starts to try to make sense of the depression, and then it'll put more stress on you if you believe the mind, particularly if it's attempting to change or fix, you're not operating correctly. What can happen is you get transferred, and then your mind is actually making the problem worse, which is why it's important to get help and not just try to figure it out alone. Get tested, get support, make sure that you're taking good care of yourself, get your need for deep rest met. Now, gate 52 brings this depression of, if you don't have the other side or it's unconscious in you, not knowing what to focus on. Gate 19 is not knowing who's going to meet your needs or how to get what your needs are met. Gate 39 is not knowing whom to tease or provoke. 19 is the flirt to get your needs met. 39 is the tease to get your passions met, romance. 41 is not knowing what kind of change I want, what kind of experience, what kind of feeling, what kind of sex. This is a very deeply sexual gate, 41. The next place we're going to go is the 60. And that is the current limitation that everybody is dealing with on this planet, however it is that you're designed to translate that frequency field or however it's affecting you. You got a 3 on the other side, it's affecting you very deeply, this Pluto and 60. So the question that arises is, why am I frustrated and stuck in this limitation? I've been sitting here not being able to move forward in my life, my career, my relationship, my business, my money, my finances. I don't care what it is. Pluto brings limitation. And the first step in transcending limitation, remember, is acceptance. This is the gate of acceptance. Accept that everybody's in the throes of mutation. It's just what's happening on the planet now. And quite nicely, it's going to move again. I cannot wait. I'm so happy. Well, I have to. What else am I supposed to do? But, it's one of those sayings. Thank goodness that Pluto is almost at the end of this limitation. Now, gate 53, what it shows up like for 53 with your mind, it will show up like, I don't know, or not knowing what to begin. Feeling trapped, okay? Just kind of like the limitation. 54, not knowing what to transform, how to rise up, who's going to support you, and how you're going to get to wherever it is you want to go, which generally happens to be more money, thank you very much, when it comes to the physical material plane of ambition, okay? Gate 38 brings this not knowing what to fight for. Again, I'm speaking to you from the perspective of you don't have the other side of the channel, or it's unconscious in you. So your mind is spinning, cycling, trying to figure it out, not knowing what to fight for, or the meaning and purpose of one's life, the passion in one's life to have a love that's worth fighting for, because both either side, okay, this 38 and 39 are both pointing at personal love gates, and they're very romantic. This longing inside for the passion inside, knowing what or who to fight for. That's a depression point for the 38. 58, not knowing who to serve. This is part of the cross of service. Okay, 58 brings this vitality recognition. It's the pressure to want to correct and perfect, to want to share life with another. It's a love gate as well. Let me come back to the sex with love gate in a moment. I did have a little comment there, but this one, see, they're mirror gates to each other. The 58 is logic. The 41 is right there. 41 is abstract, but they're both collective and they're both love gates. So the 58 is the vitality. If you're responsive, as an example, your response has to do with what is vital, or the drive to be able to correct and perfect life. And what it can oftentimes show up as is you thinking that you have to improve the other when it's designed to be collective and not personal. So back to the 41, the only love gate that has sex with it. If the sex isn't good, not falling in love. Having good sex, much easier to fall in love. The 41 is fantasy and the love of dreams. Sometimes we put it quite nicely rather than the baser desire for sex. This is the drive for group experience, 41, thank you very much, which means it leads to all kinds of sexual experiences when it gets up to the 36, gate of fucking, and 35. So it just brings initially feelings. I feel like a new experience. This pressure, this drive. I love you, says the 41. I'm going to fantasize about something else. 58 says, I love you. I want to fix you or correct you or improve you. And both of those can be very uncomfortable when they show up in not self. And the reason I'm describing this to you is so that you can link it to your recognition of why the mind might feel like it's justified in its depression, why it requires a change in order to make a mental decision. So again, remember, this is just the movie, the mind candy. Wait for your authority to move you rather than believing any of this stuff is true, particularly if you are open here. Okay, if you're open here, you don't have planetary activations, that's definitely mental conditioning, not self-strategy. Don't believe the mind. Experiment with your strategy. Try it and see. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about these. And again, we'll talk more about channels when we get there. But these are very important, which is why I'm repeating it repeatedly with all of my students, especially here at Rave Cartography, because by the time you are done with Rave Cartography, Ra wants you to be able to, do the beginnings of analyzing charts and not hurt anybody or accidentally mislead anybody. This is important. This part here is very important, these format frequencies and how they may lead to depression. So again, remember the focus, concentration, determination, the beginning of cyclical developmental processes. And then we also have the mutation of the individual pulse, the off-on pulse. So let's start over here with the beginning. There's the beginning. We have a collective. This is formatting the sensing subcircuit, abstract, which begins with a beginning, a middle, and an end, or some people say progress and finish. So depression for you begins or occurs when you're not following your decision-making strategy by not starting things correctly, in this case, in response, and not finishing or ending a cycle of experience. So then you're just left hanging. And you repeat the same damn cycle over and over again because you're not learning the lesson or you're not starting things correctly. That's a problem. It leads to depression. Okay? You get stuck there, trying to get out of something maybe that you cannot finish because it wasn't entered into correctly. That's a problem, as in it's a challenge to overcome. Enter into the right thing that goes horribly, quote unquote, wrong, and it's not a problem, it's a discovery. What to do? It is what it is. Sometimes it's just the way that your view is focused on the experience. Now, the middle part, this channel of mutation, the individual, the 63, it formats the knowing subcircuitry, the pulse of mutation off or on, and mutation occurs between the pulse, not at the pulse, which is quite interesting. So as an example, I usually draw, here's the ground, and we plant a seed, and before we see the seed actually come to the surface, breaking the crust, there's mutation happening before we see the evidence of the pulse. So what happens with individuals like this, depression occurs when you're not following your strategy by not accepting the pulse of limitation to start a new order or to have the initiation fluctuate within you in response, generating life, like new life, like busting through the crust in that process. Mutation happens between the pulse, like the space between the notes, that pregnant pause before we make sound again. If we didn't have spaces, how would you be able to make sense of the words that I'm saying or the music that is playing? Space helps us to mutate. Okay, so take space, take your time. You don't have to hurry. Oftentimes, unconsciously defined, your mind's in a jacked up hurry. I'll say it nicely, kind of. Okay. The last one, format frequencies and depression. The channel of concentration. This is logic. It's going to be collective, both sides of the collective, mirror gates in the body graph. This one is logic, though. It's the subcircuit of the logic, understanding process. This brings the energy to focus in response. And depression comes for you when you're not following your strategy, by not focusing on the right things. So what happens is you overdo, maybe put too much energy in a lot of different places instead of allowing your energy to be in response, focused and concentrated, determined, okay? This capability of the pattern moving forward in a step-by-step process. So basically, it can all be linked back to not honoring or trusting your response mechanism with these channels. Okay, we went through all the gates, we went through all the channels, or the 3 channels, and we will do it again when we get there to the circuits, the channels again. so that you can have more time to process this. Okay, so another way we can take a look at this, these 9 fuels, and this is where I would recommend, I have a lot more slides, but we're not going to read much beyond this one. The rest of it is all for you to test yourself. A lot of reminders from Living Your Design in ABCs. Here we start with the pressure to perfect, the joyous, the fuel of vitality. Again, that 58 being a love gate. Then we have the pressure to struggle. The opposition brings the fuel to fight, for meaning, for purpose, for love. The 54, marrying maiden, brings the fuel of drive. I prefer ambition because that's what Ross said here in the Rei Ching, but drive will do fine. That's true. Although all of these do have a kind of drive inherent within them. The pressure to now, not just begin, but look, complete, to end things. That pressure, what is it looking for? Finishing things. Okay. Development, 53, brings the fuel to begin things. The pressure to mutate is the 60 because it brings the energy to look for the order in life. But that fuel is of restraint, yeah? Restraint, waiting for that pulse. Mutation happens in the space between the notes. The pressure to concentrate. Why? Pressure to concentrate, or the fuel to focus, because this is keeping still. Mountain, the 52. Actually, 2 mountain trigrams. In order for us to have the energy availability, there has to be a response. And so these are kind of like waiting for right timing. What's the right timing? Response, or whatever one's authoritative process happens to be. Here, right timing. What are we waiting for? Of course, one's authoritative process, but we're literally waiting for the potential awareness on the other side, the physical manifestation of the awareness principle as it moves to the possible, potential, better. Possible is up here, but the potential awareness of the physical manifestation of the root, the seed of wisdom, survival wisdom, which is fear. Okay, fear here. Okay, so then the other side. As a reminder, a review, a recap to finalize things. Let's start down below. Remember, this is the start codon in our genetics. The pressure to what? Feel. Motion, energy, and motion. The 41 is decrease. This is the fuel of contraction. Contraction, like at wintertime when you are cutting the roses back so that they have more energy, like a rubber band that's being pulled back to snap forward in spring. This contraction, this fuel, remember the mirror gate on the other side, these love gates that are either logic, vitality, or abstract sensing. And that's love with sex. Okay. Pressure to emote. This is the experience. Yes, this is sex here, but this is the pleasure principle, the emotional system. So the pressure to emote, speaking to the channel name, pressure to emote. Now we're looking at the 39, which is obstruction, and that brings fuel to provoke. Why? We're looking to provoke or tease that spirit of abundance within the other, to get that fickleness, that wishy-washiness of that 55, to be interested, to be engaged. And then we have the 19, the pressure to be sensitive. It's approach and the fuel for support. I'm going to flirt with you so that you'll meet my needs. Are you sensitive to what I want from you? Says the 19. Okay, that's how it currently works anyway. Those are the 9 fuels. These open center questions are the things that you want to try and remember when you've got it undefined in you. Head center. Are you trying to answer everybody else's questions? Ajna, trying to convince everyone that I'm certain? Throat, are you trying to attract attention? Note the word trying. Yeah, it's like Yoda. There is no try, only do. Trying, efforting, forcing, pushing. No, that's not nine-centered beingness. The G center, self, am I looking for love and purpose and direction in life, in the lives of others? Am I constantly trying to figure out who I am? Again, remember, when you're unconsciously defined, your mind can still get caught up in this trip. So do yourself a favor when you feel anxious or pressured or stressed or confused, take a deep breath, let go of the mind's process, because you can't prove an infinite. Your heart, your willpower. Are you trying to prove yourself when your value is infinite? Remember, we're talking about open or undefined center. You don't need to prove. Sacral center. Do I know when is enough is enough? What's your tells? Oftentimes, Laveena in her classes trying to get you to find your own body's tells. What are your personal tells of not knowing when enough is enough, overdoing it, overzealousness? Exhaustion, fatigue should not be your first signs. That's a sign you've gone too far already. The splenic center, holding on to what and particularly who isn't good for you, unless you happen to be in a transit, and then a transit tells you to get rid of that person that actually is good for you. Oops. Okay. Solar plexus, are you avoiding confrontation and truth? Are you lying? Are you backstabbing? Are you not being in alignment with the word? In the beginning, there was the word authenticity, vulnerability. It's okay to cry. Solar plexus being open means that your mind says you have to lie, and you don't. But what happens when you feel like you're not in an emotionally safe place? You're afraid of the consequences of upsetting those incredibly volatile, hateful, spiteful, negative people that you don't want to offend. And so you think you have to avoid confrontation. And it's really hard, you know. The mind will come up with all kinds of reasons and stories, especially at the solar plexus center, and jacked up on all kinds of fear, nervousness. Remember, anxiety, physical fear, and nervousness. These are the top priorities to dispel, as in your mind, inside of your head, about yourself, making up stories. Any place that is open. So as I take you through learning your human design through these classes, you looking at your chart, anytime you get a trigger of recognition or awareness, wild mind write, as in free associative writing, as in process that stuff that comes up. This is the fertile soil of awareness where you can plant seeds in order to grow your potential capability of handling the truth. Confront the truth when it's necessary. It is your gift. And last but not least, Ra's favorite center, actually. He didn't like that most people completely ignored the root center when it's really important. Am I in a hurry to get things done so that I can be free of the pressure and stress? Let things take the time that they take. The purpose of life is not to hurry up and get to the end, like at the end of the book. Oh, the end of the book is you die. Everybody dies. So why hurry? Don't worry. You'll get there. We all do. The dawn of the human design system heralds a great change in the way human beings can awaken to truth. Again, truth being individual. What's your truth?